Hello and welcome to Pandora's Fox. My name's Julian Valence, joined as always on a Monday morning by Racing.com analyst Clint Hutchison. Hutch, how was the weekend? I heard you were out there.
I was out there. I was at the MRC. What a great day. Had an enjoyable day with all the punters there.
Did you Gronk
socialise? Didn't see Gronk.
Yeah. I heard he saw you, so that was all that matters.
He might have heard me.
Well, I've heard you had a fill-up, so that's a good result.
It's a good day. It's a good day.
Yeah, nice.
So, you don't get them all that often, so you've got to make the most of it. But it is one of those days where if you can make a good case for a horse that's, $8, $10, $12 in the market. So really competitive and plenty to talk about the meeting as well.
Absolutely. And firstly, we're going to talk about the track intel, the track analysis from Caulfield on Blue Diamond Day. Out 4 metres the entire circuit, mate. So we're a good 4, upgraded to a good 3 after race 5. We expected that with that hot northerly wind. As I said, the wind was up to 45 kilometres northerly. It was a headwind into the chute. In terms of how you thought it played, I'm going to start with the circle. You had to be on speed, didn't you?
You had to be.
Circle.
I mean, we had 8 of 10 runners in the first 2 in the run. I think the 9th one was 3rd in the run. So there was one horse, which we'll touch on later, that defied the pattern of the day.
Yeah.
Most of them were right there. And look, I'm not the strong northerly you would have thought would be hard to lead into, but the bottom line is it wasn't. A lot of the horse faces the breeze on pace, and it was too good. Maybe just that good 3 at Caulfield outweighed the wind.
It's typical Caulfield, wasn't it? I think if there wasn't the wind, everyone would have been going, you got to be on speed here because they run so fast, mathematically not going to be able to do it. That was tempered by the fact that I thought the northerly would have major impact. I think it had majorly impact, especially in the chute on some of these riders. I think a few, and we'll get to them shortly, didn't want to be punching the breeze, and you could see that. And we'll talk about one race in particular a little bit later, but no doubt it had impact on how some of these jockeys rode, especially early.
Yeah, for sure. But inside lanes too in the straight, like it was inside sort of 4 or 5 lanes where just about everything came from it once again, bar one.
I think you couldn't, even the winner, Jimmy Starr in the Oakley Plate, didn't swing that wide, which you sometimes can see at Caulfield sometimes when they're really running on, but that wasn't the place to be. You couldn't do that. No. It seemed like that was probably inferior ground. So, it was typical Caulfield. So wind or no wind, that's how we have the track intel this week, punters. Let's get to the Hen House. This is the diamond out of the day, and it wasn't the Blue Diamond. It was the Oakley Plate, my friend. The winner was Jimmy Starr. 5th of a second inside standard time, but here's the bit that just blows my mind. 22.70, 11.51, that's great. He's come home 10.92 just about, Jimmy Starr. Now, that's airborne. He was first up. The market wanted to be with him heavily, sort of $12 into $8, especially at the death. Bloody good horse.
He's an exceptional horse. And what's that? 5 out of 6 fresh now. His 1,100 metre win on Caulfield Guineas Day, I think, was very similar, where he bucked the trend that day. There was a pattern where it was up and in, and he was the one of the few on the day that managed to overcome that. What a ride from Ethan Brown as well. This kid, I mean, this is one for those that are the school of thought, you got to ride the horse, not the race. I mean, he just rode this horse beautifully, I thought. He tracked in, she's bulletproof in the run. And like you said, he didn't swing wide, coiled up, unleashed. I really think he's coming of age now, Ethan Brown. It was a fantastic ride. What is that? It was about his 9th Group 1 or something.
Yeah, I think his last 2 months, he got crook there for a while. He had a really bad fall and he was really crook, and I think it was probably a battle for him to get back. And now he's got back and he had a really good spring, and now that's really springboarded him into this autumn. And you're right, the ride was... or the ride of the day. I think we're talking off air before you said it was the ride of the day, and absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind, Ethan Brown, I think, said, Craig Williams is on the horse to beat here. She's bulletproof. If I can get his backside, he will take me as far as I want to be taken, whether it be at the 300 or the 250, and then I produce him and peel off her back. That's exactly how it panned out.
Exceptional performance. Exceptional and rated through the roof. And, okay, here's a question. Now, what do we do with Jimmy Starr? Is Jimmy Starr just a fresh sprinter? I know they've tried and won over 14. Yeah. I keep thinking of that, another world race over the spring where he sort of looked like he had him. He got that run on him. But he clearly goes extremely well fresh. And, do they just stick to the sprints now?
Well, look. You look at it and you go, well, where are the 1,400 metre Group 1 race? Because he's now a Group 1 horse. I mean, so you win the Oakley Plate on close to the minimum, whatever it might be. You're going to end up having to become a weight for age performer. So the 1,400 metres, and I don't think 1,600 is probably too far. So there's not that many 1,400 metre races. I know there's a Futurity in the Ore and Rupert Clark, but he's out of that now. But where's the cash? Well, the cash is in those sprint races. So you got the Newmarket in a couple of weeks at 1,200 metres, and then you go to the Spring and you've got the crazy Everest as well. I mean, he's got to be an Everest horse surely now, doesn't he?
Like he's got to be in the mix. Win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I'm not saying he comes out and wins the Everest, but I'm saying if you've got him, that's where I think you aim him up now.
1,200 fresh, no problem. I mean, he's got too good a turn of foot. You mentioned those sectionals. What was it? 21.9, final 400, 103% finishing speed. Off the charts good. In a race that rated through the roof. So look out.
Yeah, Jimmy Starr goes into the Hen House. He'll be in there for a while. And I think, will he go to I haven't heard, but I'm assuming he goes to the Newmarket now or?
I have no idea.
But you think also Flemington, like coiled up, piece of string. He's not going to be 12 lengths off him, around Caulfield. He's going to be 4 or 5 lengths. You spoke about it last week. That's what happens at Flemington. He gets the clear air and, look out. But again, maybe is he going to be better off 5 or 6 weeks instead of just bang straight away with 2 weeks?
That's going to consider.
And see, this is also the trick now for the punters out there. You're like, oh, well, can he produce it again? Well, sometimes they can't produce it again in a fortnight. They have to wait for 6 weeks again.
He's come off too big a figure here. Like if he backed up in a couple of weeks, I would think he'd probably come off it.
Yeah.
But you nearly go, if we can get an Everest spot now, go in fresh. That might be the go.
Yeah. Jimmy Starr in the Hen House. All right, for every hen house, there's always a dog house. For me, you might disagree, Hutchie, but I think it was the Blue Diamond.
Big call here, Jules. What's going on?
Well, it's Blue Diamond Day. I think the race has gone absolutely junk. But all these 2-year-olds have really struggled. They just haven't been able to run a number. Now, well done to Connections. It's great. Who cares? We've won the Group 1 Blue Diamond. So we're not talking about, I'm just talking about purely numbers. 3/4 of a second outside standard time. And a lot of the shoot races couldn't get inside standard time because of the northerly wind. That's fine. 22.93, 11.73 was only fair, I think, home.
Jules, you're being harsh.
You like the race? I know. I don't know, because you got glasses. The backing I've backed this horse, so he's a poster on your wall right now, so I can get your thoughts. But just overall as a race, I'm worried about it.
Well, that's a fair call to an extent, but the thing is, they're all going to be racing against each other. Yeah. So you can say, okay, this is not a stellar year or vintage year. I get that.
Yeah.
You were saying it before the race. Look, there's not. Everyone was of the same opinion. It's pretty open.
Yeah.
There's a lot of horse. There's nothing that stands out, and there isn't. And probably come out of the race, change barriers, whatever, change pattern on the day. You can probably get a different winner.
Yeah.
I just don't think that we can be too harsh because, it might not be a vintage year, but I wouldn't.
It was only his second start too, so there's a bit of a positive there. In terms of, it's not as if he was 5 runs in and that kind of stuff.
Question for you. Yes. So the favourite in the race, he came through the same form reference. Yep. Why wasn't this horse backed in a little bit more?
It's an interesting point. So I think the debut of Devil Knight starts $41, Field of Play starts $2.90. And then in the Diamond, we've got Field of Play $5 into $3.90, heavily supported. And Devil Knight starts $16. So from that perspective, you say, oh, well, he tightened up a little bit in comparison, but the market really wanted to be with Field of Play, didn't they? And so it felt like the bigger guys have said Field of Play is going to continue to progress and go to another higher number, and Devil Knight, that must be just its number. It's not going to be able to extend.
Which is surprising because I would have thought first to second start, you got more improvement than the horses had too.
And it wasn't far away on debut, was it? Like it was.
Beat the neck or
something. Correct. And then maybe on the line you could say, well, Field of Play, Blake was really soft to him, maybe in that prelude. I don't know, but
I just found it quite intriguing that clearly a form reference was happy to be used by the market. And you're right, the relative prices, he's really come in. But he's still drifting on the day, 12 out to 16.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's an interesting point. Yeah, so 12 out to 16 it just goes to show how inefficient this market is at the moment. And anyone thinking otherwise is wrong. That's my opinion.
I like it. So you think it's junk. I'm saying, hey, the third horse in the race was pretty good, Tycoon Star.
So I had something on him, and I reckon at the 250, he's coming. Oh, yeah, I know. He's always talking about that. I thought, he's going to storm over the top here. This is going to be a great ride, Zara. But I think he did swoop wide, and maybe that just took a little bit out of him, probably at the from the 5 to the 300. But let's see. I mean, we'll see what history shows whether these horses go on with it.
I don't think there's any stars there, but just the fact is that they're all
they're all
competing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the doghouse this week. All right, hits and misses, mate. So this is the points bet market in terms of let's see how they went and how efficient this market was. Well, probably pretty efficient with a few of these, actually, to be honest. In the first, they backed 2 horses. They backed Samangu, $5.50 into $3.50, and they back Miss Aria, $7 into $3.70. I know there was a scratching of Tonkin, but still there was a bit of support for those horses. They've run the Quinella.
Yep, and they should have too, the way the race was run. Oh, well, maybe not so much Miss Aria, but are we going to talk about this?
Yeah.
We need to talk about this race a little bit. We need to talk about this race.
We're getting to it in the next segment. Race 2, they back Shinqua, $6.50 into $3.90. I thought it was poor. Unplaced for me.
Yeah, I didn't see too many excuses.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be with it again. In race 3, they back Shanwa, $3.40 into $3.10. That was probably at the death. I think this was just from the fact that it was going to be on speed.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a pretty impressive win. Like, there might be some more guts to that horse.
Yeah, it was very good. It was interesting. I think emphasising the race, I forgive. They sat back off a strong speed the other day and led up here and over raced.
Yeah.
The horse might be cooked now.
Yep.
I don't know, but that's not the way to ride him, that's for sure. But the winner was excellent. He might not have been good enough to beat the winner anyway.
Yep. Race 4, Tropicus, really well backed here, $4.80 into $3.20. You'd had the fitness edge, say, maybe on a horse over Lofty Arch, had that one extra run, and that probably showed. Zara takes him to the front and controls it.
And by this stage of the day, I'm thinking, not too bad to be leading here, because they went a little quicker in that race.
Yes. Well, it wasn't harder compared to race 1. We're getting to it.
We'll touch on that a little later.
Race 5, Treasure the Moment, sits outside leader first up after winning in Oaks, $3.40 into $2.85. Big hit. There's more to come with her.
Yeah, they were all over this now, and she was going to position there. But she's on. I was surprised to an extent that she was a little short. She only had the one trial going in. Great win. She's a superstar. I think she can measure up.
She looks to me like, I know they're going to go the Oaks again, because that's what you do when you're a 3-year-old. You try and knock off as many Group 1s as you can. But she just, for me, looks like she's going to be a monster at 1,600 metres when she becomes a 4-year-old mare. Like a race like the Empire Rose in the spring.
Love it.
It's just all over her.
Yep.
I think that's where you can sort of, look for her future-wise.
One thing I noticed with horses like that as well, in their generation, we're talking about, a specific generation, but when you can be winning at that level from 14 to 2,000 or beyond, as she has, it's usually a sign, I think, of fairly
class.
A fair bit of class on your side.
Absolutely. Race 6, Grinzinger Bell, $3.70 into $3.10. They're expecting this horse was just going to go back and do what it always does first up, which is usually its big figure, and then it regresses throughout the rest of the prep. I'm worried about Grinzinger Bell going forward.
Put up with an issue though.
Okay.
So
All right,
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was enough to say that it was a bit like me after pickleball, There was a few heart palpitations.
Race 7, they wanted this guy. They were saying the market said this guy is going to sit outside leader. There's going to be a few other horses that are going to be neutral for whatever reason. I don't know why. $1.90 into $1.70 hit. Obviously, Mr. Brightside, he is just a wait for age beast now, and the ride. Yeah, which is a lot. I think they were saying it's more than Better Loosen Up. And I remember back in the days, going back a long time now, Hutch, Better Loosen Up was an absolute freak. And he's now won more Group 1s than Better Loosen Up. It's
to talk about that race. So we're going to chat about that race a little bit more.
Let's talk about it now because I haven't really got much else to
add.
I thought Evaporate went really, really well because I thought he was torched.
Okay.
I thought they rode really well throughout the day. I just thought Evaporate he got wrong. I would have loved to have seen them lead on Evaporate. I thought it was there to be led and have the other 3-year-old Private Life outside of you. They didn't, and then he just kept pushing the button 3 wide, and he's ran enormous. I mean, from the 500 to the sort of the 200, he just kept forcing the issue, and, he's finished fourth.
I was interested to see how he'd perform because he's sort of a horse that early got under our guard.
Yeah.
But then he kept progressing, and I think
he still is, isn't he?
He's just very, very good. I mean, he wasn't beaten far in the end with a torrid run, like you said. Tom Kitten was good, smothered up, held up, but, it had that sort of run where you'd expect him to explode late as well.
Yeah, I think with when you look at that race hasn't gone that well.
Yeah.
Like, we can sort of, look at that race now, you can have the overlay of it now, and you go, well, for a horse like Tom Kitten to have no luck whatsoever and then flash and late and just get beaten on the line, you sort of think, well, it hasn't rated huge. I think Mr. Brightside went better first up in terms of a number and he's come back a little bit, but he still just puts himself in the high percentage play. So he's going to win those kinds of races because he's such a good racehorse. So I don't know what to do with a few of them else going forward. I mean, a lot of people would have said, I Wish I Win's really good, and I can understand that, but I don't know where he fits now. I Wish I Win. I don't know
I thought he was excellent. I thought the run was good.
Does he go to the All-Star Mile as well?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, they might have a throw at the stumps. I mean, it's an interesting issue that you bring up about it because what contains more merit? The horse that maybe faces the breeze, does it tough, or the unlucky one that's in behind flashing home, who's done no work early. And that's the art of, I suppose, a lot of the trying to find the future winners. But I'm with you. I don't think Brightside was anywhere near what he normally is. But, the interesting thing with him, 1,400 on that distance range, he never wins by a big margin anyway. He seems to just do enough. But he keeps doing it.
Yeah, correct. Well, they were looking at, I think that's the 8th time he started in the red in his career.
Right.
He's won 6 of them. Like, he's a horse that you can trust. Yeah. He's a horse that continually does the job for you. So, well done to Connections for Mr. Brightside. But as I say, I think the Evaporate. The weird thing is Evaporate's gone enormous, right?
New Zealand?
But so now he goes to the Kiwi in New Zealand. So he's got to travel over there off this torrid run. He's got to get there, acclimatise, all that sort of, stuff that he needs to do. And then he's got to come back. And I don't know, does he come back and then they continue to go with the prep? Because then it becomes quite a long campaign.
You wouldn't think he could continue on after that, would you? You would think that.
Yeah. He'd be hard to beat in that Kiwi, I would have thought, off that run.
I think Perfumus goes over for that. Or run well.
Okay.
Out of a benchmark defeat last start.
Right.
But interesting.
Yeah. So let's just see, hopefully he comes through, because I think he would have slept really well Saturday night. Evaporate, unfortunately, for those on.
Did you sleep well on Saturday night?
No, I didn't.
Doesn't sound like it.
Didn't at all. Race 8 in the Diamond. Field of Play, $5 into $3.90. Misses unplaced. Thought it had every chance, really.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they just didn't run probably up to, what it had been doing, which can happen. I thought the great run of the race, obviously the third horse, I think they are going to go to the slipper with that one. Yeah. And given the pattern, I thought it was a good run. Who knows with the winner? Like you said, I don't think it's a vintage year by any stretch, but still second start in a race and you come out one of Blue Diamonds.
Yeah, you can't complain. And race 9, the other hit here is Jimmy Star, $12 into $8. And at the death, the bigger guy sort of wanted to be with Jimmy Star. So you can see that one nailed it, and you want to be with this horse now going forward. But as I say, there's probably some little caveats there that you think, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, or even longer, he needs to be just a little bit fresh, keep the freshness in the legs, so then he can explode through the line.
The record speaks for itself, doesn't it, with regard to him? And it will prove to be a good form race.
Oh, yeah. No, this race has gone great. I mean, as you said, we put it in the Hen House. It's gone ripper. She's Bulletproof's gone enormous. She's, gone great. And
we'll get that Group 1, I think.
Yeah. Well, like a race, I don't know what they do, but, a race like the Sangster or something like that seems to fit really well with her. We know she's got good numbers at 1,200 metres as well, so that should set for that. That's the hits and misses with PointsBet. Rightio, Hutch, we're getting to it, setting fire to it. So, new segment here. We introduced it last week. We're going to have a look at race 1. Now, I know the big talk, and I play into this as well, was that the northerly wind was going to have impact and it was going to be hard to lead, especially for the shoot. And there's no doubt that jockeys obviously had that belief as well, because race 1, so overall time, it doesn't tell you everything, but they've gone 2 seconds slower than the Oakley Plate. 2 seconds.
That's a long way.
Well, it's around 12 lengths, to be honest, if you put them in layman's terms. They've allowed Samangu to just do it itself. Like, they were actually, honestly, if you were on a travelator at the airport, you would have been going past them. They were going so slow. It was ridiculous. Mrs. Chrissy sort of went to sit outside, and then it started reefing and tearing. So then Blake takes the back of it with Miss Aria, and then Jet Stanley on Pondalawi just decides to fall out the back as well. And
I was on it. That was great.
Well,
this is great viewing.
And this is the interesting thing with this, is that I thought Pondalawi would probably be a bet. And again, this is no criticism of particular jockeys, but putting an apprentice on a big Group 1 day, I think sometimes senior jockeys are there for a reason.
Definitely.
And I think this horse in particular is a horse that needs to be ridden over its neck a little bit, and you need to get into it a bit. It's not a horse that you sit on speed and it can just finish off. It's a horse that actually you need to get some guts in behind it. So I think, as much as many people like you would say Pondalawi might have been disappointing, mathematically it had to run 10.5.
Yeah.
The last 200 to be able to get past Samangu, who I think runs the best last 200 of the day, 11.03 outside of Jimmy Star. So the way that race was ran, the jockeys allowed and the tactics allowed Samangu to do. Yep. Your money was torched if you weren't Samangu. I know Miss Aria got close, but was never going to get past the winner.
No.
But it probably provides an opportunity, I think, for a horse like Pondalawi next start. Senior jockey goes on, and I think I'd be willing to then back that horse, because I think even though in the form guide it'll say it's ran 4th first up and 4th second up and probably been disappointing, the market expectation, I don't think it could have done much.
The ability is there, and I agree with you. Yeah, it just was a game over, but there wasn't that many runners in the field. But like you said, that's how slow that they went.
Yeah.
Pondalawi's got to sort out that early speed, though. Yeah. You can't be giving away.
Correct.
Start all the time in races, and once you go up in grade, you get found out. the question I have is like, at what point of the race do these other riders say, I've got to go?
We're in trouble, aren't we?
You know, you're in a short distance race, and for more than half of it, they crawl.
Yeah. I mean, 1,100 and to be 2 seconds slower than another race on the day, I get it's the Oakley Plate, it just seems outrageous. It wasn't over 2,600 where you can see those kinds of differences. It was only over 1,100. It didn't go for that long.
Crazy.
You know, it goes for a minute
on a
and
quick
2
track.
seconds. And that was the other thing too, that it was, good 4, probably close to a good 3, by maybe the kickoff day.
Yeah.
So anyway,
we're setting fire
to it. So
I like it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. I just thought the tactics there were poor, and even to begin with, some tactics of certain jockeys going on or not being on, setting fire to it. Right, in the Foxes Den. Let's bring some light to this show now, Hutch.
I had a lot of light in the last segment, to be honest.
You're kicking us off because you've got a few here.
I have. I've got a few. Look, I thought Lofty Arch is the first one that I want to stick with from the day. No fault of Craig's, really. Couldn't find a spot. When you draw wide, there's no spot to get in.
And you're first up.
What a run.
Yeah.
What a run. 4 wide without cover. Exactly the recipe you didn't want on the day. And I wasn't a believer before the race necessarily, only because it only had a few starts. I wanted to see Lofty Arch do it, but that was some sort of a run first up, all things considered. Overall time was fine. They'll pick out a good race with Lofty Arch. So that is definitely the first one. Earlier in the week, there was a maiden winner. She hung the moon, who went forward, led up, and it was a great effort. I think it was Kyneton, I think it was.
Yeah.
Look, it's a horse that they dabbled in a couple of stakes races in from a couple of light preparations.
Yep.
But there must have been some issues with her. I'll tell you what, if they can keep it sound, they'll go wherever they go. If it's a 64 or a 70, she'll be very hard to beat, like the fact she went forward, one with a leg in the air. And one from middle of the week, Maui Man, who wasn't really fancied by the market, Jules, but went to Pakenham and ran a pretty good time. And I like the style of the win for a horse that might also get over a bit of ground. Not with a big stable, not really fashionable. It was a benchmark 64. But I think Maui Man, they'll probably pick off another benchmark race, and I'd be sticking with Maui.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially with Maui Man. And I think people will say, it's a big price. Is that an outlier? But it's beaten a short price favourite, and there's a good gap to third. There's some guts to it. It's beaten the market expectation. I think the market will now cotton onto it.
Quick question for you. So if a horse wins at a big price, you sort of you take that into account?
It depends on which stage of their career they're at. Right. I don't care too much for starting price in the first 5 starts because I think they're still trying to figure it out. But if it's 50th start and it wins at 50s, then I'm starting to go, I'm a little bit worried about that. And can it hold that form again?
Even if the overall rating of the race is good?
Oh, if the overall rating of the race is good, I'll back it in. But if it's its 50th start and you think, well, it hasn't shown that, it was 50 to 1 for a reason. There's got to be something that's a little bit worried that maybe it doesn't have the consistency. So then you've got to factor that in. But I think in a horse like this, we trust it. Early doors, SP, they don't know. My horses from Saturday, Confetti Garden. So it was in the 1,800 metre race. It was off 31 days. So it won 2 starts in a row. This is the Chamois race.
Yes.
I just thought it sort of lost its position. It was the first one off the bit, and then it came again. So I think off the 31 days, it now goes to 2,000 metres and beyond, and I think we can be with Confetti Garden next start. Treasure of the Moment, I thought that win was outstanding, as we've spoken about earlier. I just think it's going to be a monster at 1,600 metres when we get into a 4-year-old mare grade. But the Vinery, which I think they'll go to at some stage, might be a ripping race because the 2,000 metres Group 1 there at Rosehill probably run into a horse called Aliana, who was pretty good first up behind Broadsiding in Sydney. So, and I think Treasure of the Moment might be able to get Aliana just for the fact that I reckon Aliana's a big track horse. And around Rosehill, Treasure of the Moment might just be off and gone. And I've got one from Ararat Maiden Hutch.
Ararat, where is that?
It's near Ballarat, but not really near there. I think there's a prison there. But I think it's one of those prisons where they just have the gates and you can just walk out. So I'm just not really sure what it actually is. Yeah.
Sorry, everyone from Ararat.
Yeah. Well, I think there's other stuff there. They've got the China Bowl there, which I think they've now don't call the China Bowl. So I think it's just the bowl.
The bowl.
Yeah. Moonraker is it's called.
Good movie.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't watch it. I can't sit still for long enough. You know that. So Moonraker for me, led. I know Ararat, you can be a little bit advantageous to lead and win. But it's done a big number. I wouldn't mind it just in a Mooney Valley somewhere, 64 or 70. I reckon we'll get a price about it. So Moonraker for me. Fox's Den's done. You got anything outside the Fox for me?
Outside the Fox? No, I don't really have anything outside the
Hong
Fox.
Kong, just quickly.
Yes. Great race in
also
Saudi.
And the Saudi as well. So he went enormous, didn't he? Romantic Warrior we're talking of here.
There'll be a lot of discussion about James's ride, which he probably won't make because he lost, but it was just such a great race. Great for racing.
Yep.
1-2, drew well clear the rest. The winner of that race is a superstar as well. Probably one of the best dirt horses in the world. So, no, it lived up to expectations. I think with regard to Hong Kong down the track, I think they're going to go with Mr. B to that mile. That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
So
running the All-Star Mile, and it'll go to the Group 1 International Day or whatever in April, is it?
Yeah, end of April, Champions Mile. So he'll go there. And, there's a couple of nice horses that might be targeting.
So Caulfield Rising wins again on Sunday.
1,400.
So is he paddock now, or will he go to Champions Day?
No paddocks in Hong Kong, my friend. They keep him working. They keep him working.
Does he go to the Champions Day as well? Is there a 1,200 there?
He'll go back to the sprint. So he'll be running in that sprint, and he'll be extremely hard to beat. I'm not sure with Romantic Warrior. They might be going to Japan. They're going to run again in Dubai in a few weeks. So there's a few moving parts there. And I think on another note, just with some of those futures, we pointed out Point and Shoot recently.
Yes. He's coming.
Yes.
And he's tightened right up, my friend. So the $11 or the $13 you tipped into the punters a couple of weeks ago, I saw now he's around $5 or $6. And I'd say that might even tighten up a bit
because there was a chance he was going to go to the Rosehill Guineas.
The Randwick Guineas, which I think is the week after, but I heard that he is coming down.
Anyway, give him strength.
Correct. And the other horse, Voyage.
Bubble.
Yes.
Superstar.
Would he be a chance to ever come to a Cox Plate?
Yes, he would. And I'm going to get some early mail on that this week.
Yeah, good.
Stay tuned for next show.
Nice. All right, done and dusted now. That is the Melbourne one. Hutch, thanks for your time. I'll see you next week. And now we're heading up to Sydney to see your old sparring partner of yours, Nick Ashman. Nico, what do you got for me?
Good to be here, Jules. We had a great card, 10 races at Rosehill on Saturday. A bit of irrigation and rain during the week. So we started the meeting on the worst side of a good 4, and that just meant that those inside lanes were a little more choppy. And we ended up seeing sort of 6 of the 10 races being won by horses in lanes 4 to 7. But still, it was an advantage to be forward of midfield and on pace, with 8 of the 10 races won by horses settling 1st to 5th. So it didn't impact racing too much, and probably actually made the day fairer. But unfortunately for us who thought we had a bit of intel on how the track would play, that little bit of extra irrigation meant that it was a little more off the fence than what we were expecting.
Beautiful. So that's the track intel for Rosehill from Saturday from Nico. Let's get to the Hen House, mate. So say maybe a race that you think went really well. And I think you've identified race 6, which was the Silver Slipper.
Look, it was a tricky day, Jules, to find a standout race. There was no real Hen House certainty. But I thought the Slipper, in what must be said, and I just heard you and Hutchi talking about the Blue Diamond, and you weren't overly keen on it. I don't think it's a very good crop of 2-year-olds this year, and I think this is one of the better rating races going into it. So Baywak, or however you want to pronounce his name, for Godolphin, he's run the slowest of 3 1,100-metre races on the day. But I want to make the point of this. First 500 metres of this race was 3 lengths slower than Boston Rock's benchmark 78, which went very well, and 5 lengths slower than Time to Boogie in the last. So they went through that first 500 metres much slower, and they took ground off both those races over the last 600 metres. Last 400, 200, 22, 6 and 11, 5, 2, 3 lengths inside standard or above benchmark, depending on how you want to word it. And we're just outshaded some of those other races, particularly over the last 200 metres. So we'll talk about Woderton in a moment's time, but I thought this horse was pretty good out in front. He's got that tactical speed. Woderton, well, he just had to go back from that wide gate. We got the tactics there from Chris Waller during the week. Should come as no surprise to anyone that that's what they did. Unfortunately, he was still 3 wide, no cover. And I still think he's the horse to beat in the Golden Slipper in a few weeks' time.
I think from what you've said, too, of how this race sort of shape has developed, is that this is a race you would think that sets a great platform for these horses now to explode with their next start. So it's not that fast first 400 or first 600 metres that then has them regressing in their last 300 or 400, which then can be a worry for their next start. The way you've set this up actually is that this provides a platform for these horses to now continue to progress their rating, with that last sort of 600 being a pretty good monster home.
Yeah, exactly, Jules. And you and I have been doing this for quite a few years, and you don't really want the gut busters at this point of their preparation, particularly 2-year-olds. They tend to go sour much quicker than the older horses. So I think from Woderton and for the Woderton fan club, and there's plenty of them out there, this is actually an ideal run. Aside from the fact that he was 3 wide, no cover, at least he had a very gentle pace, and he was well off that gentle pace. He was able to finish through the line, I don't think you could have expected much more from him from where he was. Had he won the race, he's probably your even money favourite for the Golden Slipper. So I still think he's on track.
Outside of Woderton at this day at Rosehill, I think probably the biggest other talking horse was Broadsiding, who was first up. He was soft in the market. He sort of was $2.15, $2.20 out to close to $3 sort of by the time those gates opened. What do you make of Broadside's performance? Because, I in particular probably sort of had jury out on him. I wanted to see him do it again, but his number seems pretty good here first up.
It's decent, isn't it? It's not something that you're going to jump out of trees to back him necessarily next time. But for the second preparation in a row, he's got the job done first up over 1,400 metres at Rosehill. Of course, he won the Golden Rose in the spring. Just looking at the times, obviously it was more than half a second slower than the Ducasse race, a benchmark 100 over the same trip. But they went through the first 800 metres about 5 lengths slower, almost a full second slower. So they've pegged back a bit of ground there over the last 600 metres, which is what you want to see. We'll touch on the second and third place getters in a few moments' time. But I just want to talk about Broadsiding and what does Team Godolphin and James Cummings do with him now. Obviously, the immediate goal is to go to the Randwick Guineas and try and knock that off. But you'd have to think that some of the horses that finished behind him there are a chance at knocking him off, given their splits were much sharper over the last 600 metres than him. And then what do? Do they go to a Rosehill Guineas and stretch him out to 2,000 metres again? I'll tell you the race that I reckon would be cherry ripe for a horse like him is to go in reasonably fresh to the all-age stakes at the back end of the carnival and catch these horses on the way down, if you like. You've got to remember that, his goal will be to get a Group 1 win as an autumn 3-year-old. If he does that in the Randwick Guineas, then your next mission is to try and beat the older horses at Way for Age to add value to his pedigree. And they either do that in the George Ryder, but maybe James is a meticulous thinker. He might be thinking, well, hang on a second. If I give this horse a bit of a break, I can bring him back for the all-age stakes in a few weeks' time. Nice and fresh how he likes to be, and at 1,400 metres. So there's a bit to play out there, but Randwick get his immediate goal, and then depending on how he goes there, he'll either go against the older horses or onto the Rosehill Guineas. It's
a really good point you raise here, and it's for people who are playing in the futures sort of markets. The way you're thinking is really good. So it allows the punter to open up their mind to go, okay, what are the other options? Because this horse winning a 2,000 metres, say, after the Randwick Guineas, winning a Rosehill Guineas, does nothing for his page. It doesn't add his value whatsoever. So they are looking exactly what you would have thought. Open age, around that mile, he becomes a lot more, worthy as a stud prospect. So, look, a race like the All Age 2 is pre-noms. So you've got that insurance as well. It's not an all-in. You won't do your cash because it'll just be that Monday before whether that horse nominates, and we'll know by then whether he's either still actually working or not working. So I think if he's in the market for the all-age in particular that you've identified, Nico, it's probably not the worst to just have something on because I think you've got some insurance there with the pre-noms.
That's the race that I'd back him in now. The rest, I think you've got to let go for the time being. He's beatable in a Randwick Guineas. He's definitely beatable in a Rosehill Guineas, particularly if Swift Falcon gets up to 2,000 metres. We'll touch on him in a few minutes' time. But exactly, if he runs even at Doncaster, they may not come back. He'll be deeper into a preparation. If he runs in a Rosehill Guineas, they almost certainly won't be coming back to an all-age stakes. So it looks like a bit of a free hit at this stage, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So that's the Hen House. We obviously speak about the Silver Slipper, and obviously we touched a little bit on Broadsiding as he wins first up again, as Nico said, repeats what he did in the Golden Rose in the spring. Doghouse, my friend. So something that you think, look, it might have been a good bet on Saturday, but now we've got to look progressively to the next few weeks, and do we want to be with this race? And maybe the market might be against it. What have you identified? Because it looks like from my notes, you've gone race 7 here.
Yeah, our Anchorage, I've just gone against it. And I know on your stuff it's gone better than what it has on mine, but he was sort of 3/4 of a second outside benchmark or outside standard, or however you want to word it, 4.5 lengths slower than what I expect from that grade. Last 400, 200, 23.03. 11.76, pretty much bang on average for this grade. Nothing wrong with it, except for the fact that they went out pretty slow. And I think in terms of following a horse going forward, I want to see something come home quicker than your standard times if it's gone out slow. So I'm going to put the pen through the race.
Beautiful. So that's one we can be against. That's the Doghouse. That was the Hen House beforehand. Now let's hit up hits and misses. So here's the points bet market. Any movers that we identified throughout the Saturday that were plunged, and see if we can either be following them for their next start, Nico, or maybe this was just their day in the sun. Start with race 2 here, mate. Creon was double figures, $11 into $4, and it's ran unplaced. The move, and do we want to back up again with this horse?
Well, look, the pace of this race was a genuine tempo. I don't think Creon stays a proper 1,300 metres. I think he's more of an 1,100 metre horse. So to answer your question, I would back him again, but I want him back at least 100, if not 200 metres in trip. 3 weeks between runs would be nice. He doesn't need a huge freshen up. He wasn't up on top of that speed, but I'd just like to see that freshness put back in his legs. If we get a price about him next time out, he was well supported here. Happy to take that if he goes back to 1,100 metres.
So that's some good intel for the punters out there with Creon. Race 5, Macarena. This was off the map, my friend. $2.55 into $1.55. Runs unplaced.
Yeah, no one doing the Macarena on Saturday night. Not if they backed this gallop, and there was plenty of them that did it. I couldn't find a reason for the performance, Jules. It just looks like a poor performance for mine. Had to do a bit of work early to get across and sit outside Lee, but the pace of the race was really, really slow. They ran the best last 400, 200 metres of the day, as they should have done. We're talking about the Millie Fox Stakes. The big query on this race now, Jules, is these horses that go towards an emancipation over 1,500 metres. If you're going towards emancipation, you've got a strong on-pace horse, my suggestion is you run them along. Because a few of these coming out of this race, they're good mares, don't get me wrong, but they might be ready for a fast run 1,500 metres.
It's a really good point. They might be a little bit soft still underneath. So that's a very good point also. Race 8, linebacker against obviously broadsiding. It was $5.50 into $3.70. Unplaced here. Obviously broadsiding was a little bit soft, so the market had to go somewhere. They wanted to go with linebacker, who was okay first up. Second up, what are we doing now with him?
Well, I think the reason why they went with him is just because he had the run under the belt, but the race didn't really pan out the way he had hoped it would. So it was only an even tempo. It was a little bit below average through the first 800 metres. And, I think if you look at him historically, he likes a fast tempo race. He didn't get that on Saturday. He didn't get that advantage that he would have had with the run under the belt. And I think the market probably got the pace of the race wrong, and he was brought undone. It's worth noting, obviously the winner's a very good horse on his day, broadsiding, and second and third, Swift Falcon and Aliana. I think they're in for big autumns. We'll touch on them in a moment's time. So the fact that he was unplaced, I don't think it's a complete disgrace. I just don't think the race suited him in terms of shape.
So we look at linebacker and we go, okay, he's had the gelding operation. He's had 2 starts this prep. Do we now really only want to zero in on him? Maybe a big handicap where there's going to be plenty of speed. He'll be able to absorb that pressure. And yes, he probably doesn't have an 11 flat in him, but he might have the ability to be able to absorb the pressure and run an 11.6 and 11.6 probably consistently. Is that the race shape that linebacker needs going forward?
100% it is, and he could go towards a Doncaster. I'm not sure if he can win one. He needs to just lift a little bit off what he's done.
Yep.
The race that I can see for him, Jules, more than anything is, and he doesn't mind a wet track, is the Stradbroke. I'd probably give him a bit of a freshen up, maybe run him in the all-age stakes, see if he can do something there, depending on whether or not broadside and the like go there. You might be able to pinch a race like that. Rail's usually out at Randwick at the back end of the carnival. Bang him on speed, try and pinch it in front. And if you can't, you run a place, you go up to Queensland, maybe give him one run into a Stradbroke, and you might find that you can do the job there.
And the last one we're going to look at for the hits and misses for points bet here is race 9, Ducasse, $7 into $4.20. Big hit here. They get the chocolates.
Yeah, and that's because he had his 2 best friends removed coming into this preparation, Ducasse. So everyone thought he was a wet tracker, and even though there was a bit of give in the track in the start of the day, by the time we got to this second last event, the track had well and truly dried out. It was a genuine 4 by that stage, maybe even on the better side of a 4. The fact is that the gelding operation has improved this horse, it's made him more consistent. And if you actually go through his dry track form, it boded pretty well for a benchmark 100. So he's back. You can back him with confidence next time around in the right race.
Okay, so that's positive too. So Nico's saying, yes, they got the chocolate on Saturday, but I think you might be able to trust this horse now he's had the gelding operation. That was hits and misses for this week in Sydney, punters. Okay, mate, we're going to go inside the Fox's den here. So you've identified a few horses you want to be following. You think their runs were really good. They've got some merit. Start us off because there's a couple here that I'm actually quite excited, probably the first 2 in particular, but the first one here, the 3-year-old boy, Swift Falcon, you were impressed with his effort?
I was in love with him. I backed him for the Doncaster on Sunday morning. The price is somewhat trimmed in from then. I think there was 20s around on Sunday. I think you'll get 11 and 12 now. I wouldn't be rushing into that necessarily, particularly because it's all in. But he ran the best last 200 metres of the day. He's got form up to 2,000 metres. I thought he was outstayed by El Costello in the spring. So I just wonder if Team Hawkes will look at this and go, what have we got here? We've got a horse that's performed at Group 2, not a Group 1 winner yet. He might win the Group 1 Randwick Guineas next start. Who knows? Where do you want to take a 3-year-old who's a miler? It's going to be low in the weights and a handicap. You want to go to a Doncaster mile. That's his race this autumn. A lot will depend on what happens in his next couple of starts. I think he'll go to the Randwick Guineas. I think they'll give him his go again, a chance again at 2,000 metres in the Rosehill Guineas. But don't be surprised, win, lose or draw, if he comes back and has a crack at the Doncaster mile, because the weights will be out for the Donny by then. And I reckon he looks a great bet down on the minimum.
Yeah, I think he would be on the minimum. And probably the trick with him is, and the trick with so many of these is just getting in to a race like the Doncaster. We know they're very competitive races just to actually get into, let alone winning them. So the trick might be just being able to get into the race with Swift Falcon, but you seem to have identified a good one here. I think this one's a pretty good one too. 3-year-old filly you're just about to talk about.
Yeah, Aliana. Now, she was probably a certainty beaten in the 1,000 guineas. No disrespect to the winner there, but her barrier, she got a long way back. She was the only horse launching out of the pack at Caulfield that day, and she was very, very good. She resumed off, I think, 77 days on Saturday. She probably wanted a faster tempo. Again, she was a horse that probably, like Linebacker in the Hobartville, wanted that faster tempo. You got to remember her stablemate, Lady Shenandoah, or Lady Shannon Doherty, as I call her.
Yeah.
She probably wanted the faster tempo. She dodged the stablemate in the Light Fingers last week. We'll obviously dodge her in the Surround Stakes this Saturday. I think she's, because of her profile, like Swift Falcon, she's a great bet in the Coolmore. I don't want to smash the $8 around town at the moment, because if Lady Shenandoah wins the Surround and goes to the Coolmore, she'll be your hard favourite in the race. They'll want to back her for sure, even though she'll give a weight penalty away to Aliana. But Aliana's a very good horse. You and I spoke on the phone. We're in agreement here. She's a big track horse. I think they'll go to the Coolmore. They probably go to the Vinery, give her a crack at the 2,000 metres just to get a view of what to do with her in the spring. But I think she'll almost certainly come back to the mile in the Queen of the Turf, the 1,600-metre race for the fillies and mares on day 2 of the championships. That is her race. And if she's good enough, she will measure up against some of the better fillies and mares in the land.
Yeah, I love that you've picked the eyes out of the calendar with this horse, because I think you speak so well in terms of she is a big track horse, and that was clearly typified in the race at the 1,000 Guineas, where she just crabbed around Caulfield. It just wasn't her go. Rosehill's sort of probably a similar shape to that. So she's going to have some difficulties. And the Vinery, she'll probably end up running against a horse called Trust the Moment, which down here was really good first up over 1,400 metres and probably has some tactical speed advantage over Aliana. But the big track, Queen of the Turf, yes, that is outrageous. I think that sets up really well for her. Next one, Sprinter, was in the last race. Look, ran okay, but probably just a little bit below market expectation.
Yeah, she's an A-lister. Obviously talking through my pocket a little bit here, but why can't you really?
Yeah.
Look, she was just back off. The pace was genuine, don't get me wrong. It was a good, solid tempo up front. This stage of the day, the track had dried out. We're getting towards that good 3 zone, Jules, with the drying weather in Sydney. So because all day they'd been winning off the fence a bit, and there was only a couple of really fast run races throughout the afternoon, I think jockey's allowed time to boogie to go to the front and sit on speed and do his own thing in front. He loves to do that. And over 1,100 metres at Rosehill on a dry track, it's very hard to pick up the front runners. She's an A-lister, had too big a task. She was good through the line, sectionally very good late. She was the one launching out of the pack. I think if Bjorn can get her into a Galaxy,
yep,
where they do run on a bit more, I don't think she's completely hopeless in a race like that. I still like to run on Saturday, and a bit of juice in the track, she'll be an even bigger chance.
Okay, so she's an A-lister as well. Happy to butter up again if we can get her in the right race. And then the last horse you've identified for the Fox's Den for the Sydney version is the Boom 2-year-old. You're happy enough with his performance, mate?
Yeah, Woden. As we said, the Silver Slipper for mine is up there with the better rating 2-year-old races this season. It's not a race that I'd normally get overly excited about, because it's sort of on my database rated an 86, which means nothing. But to give you context, it's up there maybe sitting second or third on the list of good 2-year-old races so far this season. So, but what I like about it is they didn't overdo it in front. They haven't burnt themselves. These horses can probably have another run before going into a Golden Slipper. But most importantly, it was clearly the most unlucky runner in the field, covering ground without any cover. and we know what he can do off his debut. It looked to me like they were looked after him on Saturday, and I think you'll see the real Woden next time he steps out.
Absolutely. So there's 4 horses you can identify, punters, 4 in the Foxes' den. There's plenty of races up in Sydney. Obviously, we're getting into their carnival. So pick the eyes out of those futures. I think Nick's identified some really good races there that you might have a bit of insurance with pre-noms as well, that you get your cash back if they decide not to nominate. 2 Group 1s this week in Sydney, mate. So that'll be exciting. I think we see those good horses back again via Sistina. So what's the weather? Just an early prediction of the weather. Is it okay up in Sydney this week thus far?
There's no rain. There's a little bit of rain earlier this week on Tuesday, but for the rest of the week, there's none. So we should get a dry track. Via Sistina bounces back in the Chipping Norton if you're looking to put something in your futures markets. Lady Shenandoah, she looks the winner, doesn't she, of the Surround Stakes? But there was a horse that ran 6 to her in the Light Fingers, Amelita, who won the Red Roses down there up the straight. I reckon she'll run a big improved race on Saturday in the Surround Stakes.
Very good. So obviously, Nico's just mentioned the Chipping Norton. I think it's been changed its name to my nemesis now, Very Elegant. I think it's now the Very Elegant Stakes. So out there with the Very Elegant Island. So Via Sistina and her can just be on that island again with those big numbers that we'll never ever see again. Thanks for the week, mate. I'll leave you with that.
A pleasure, brother. I'll talk to you on Thursday. You stay well now.
Okay, punters, that is done and dusted. Melbourne in the can, Sydney now in the can. We'll see you Thursday for the preview show.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.